all countries around the world to join us by cutting off all trade and financial ties with North Korea.
New economic sanctions imposed on North Korea.
Today I'm announcing a new executive order I just signed that significantly expands our authorities to target individuals, companies, financial institutions that finance and facilitate trade with North Korea.
U.S. President Donald Trump has imposed new economic sanctions against North Korea for its nuclear threat, targeting individuals and businesses that finance trade with Pyongyang's reclusive communist regime and funding for its weapons development. The U.S. leader called North Korea's nuclear bomb and ballistic missile programs a grave threat to peace and security in our world, and it is unacceptable that others financially support this criminal rogue regime.
As I outlined at my address to the United Nations General Assembly, North Korea's nuclear weapons and missile development is a grave threat to peace and security in our world, and it is unacceptable that others financially support this criminal rogue regime. The brutal North Korean regime does not respect its own citizens or the sovereignty of other nations. Our new executive order will cut off sources of revenue that fund North Korea's efforts to develop the deadliest weapons known to humankind. The order enhances the Treasury Department's authorities to target any individual or entity that conducts significant trade in goods, services, or technology.
About this situation. I think this is an outcome, that meaningful outcome that the three countries have made. President Trump just talked about the executive order through which the U.S. is going to be implementing sanctions on against the DPRK, and also there is a major.
Trump made the announcement alongside South Korean President Moon Jae-in and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, both of whom praised the U.S. action as they met in New York on the sidelines of the annual United Nations General Assembly. The president said the new U.S. sanctions give the U.S. Treasury Department authority to target any individual or entity that conducts significant trade in goods, services, or technology with North Korea. A short time later, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin elaborated.
No bank in any country should be used to facilitate Kim Jong-un's destructive behavior. This new executive order will authorize Treasury to impose a range of sanctions, such as suspending U.S. correspondent account access to any foreign bank that knowingly conducts or facilitates significant transactions tied to trade with North Korea.
The Treasury Secretary said the new financial sanctions would be applied to behavior after Thursday, when President Trump signed an executive order allowing the Treasury Department to enforce them, which includes specific areas of commerce.
Foreign financial institutions are now on notice that going forward, they can choose to do business with the United States or with North Korea, but not both. This new executive order enables Treasury to freeze assets of anyone conducting significant trade in goods, services, or technology with North Korea. It also allows us to freeze assets of actors supporting North Korea's textile, fishing, IT, and manufacturing industries. We call on all countries around the world to join us by cutting off all trade and financial ties with North Korea in order to achieve a denuclearized Korean peninsula.
Despite tensions over North Korea's nuclear and missile threats, South Korea confirmed Thursday a plan to send $8 million in aid to the North. The Unification Ministry said its aid policy remains unaffected by tensions. China has called for dialogue, but Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe told the UN General Assembly pressure, not talks, is what is needed. Mr. Abe said the North is working to attain hydrogen bombs and intercontinental ballistic missiles despite decades of talks. North Korea, he added, must be made to give up all nuclear and ballistic missile programs in a complete, verifiable, and irreversible manner. Grant Newsham, a senior research fellow at the Tokyo-based Japan Forum for Strategic Studies, tells VOA's Victor Beattie that Mr. Abe believes it is in Japan's interest to stay as close to the Americans as possible.
Mr. Abe does believe in his own right that it is Japan's interest to take a firm, almost uncompromising, for now, approach towards North Korea. While he is trying to stay close to the Americans, he also realizes that, and personally believes, that it's in his interest, it's in Japan's interest, to take this approach, and one should never underestimate the effect that the kidnapping, the abductions of Japanese citizens has had on Prime Minister Abe and on a lot of Japanese as well. It really does resonate, and I'm not with a lot of people, and I'm not sure that they, particularly the American side, has ever quite understood that.
With North Korea, and I'm very proud to tell you that, as you may have just heard moments ago, China, their central bank, has told their other banks, that's a massive banking system, to immediately stop doing business with North Korea. This just happened, it's just reported. In addition to everything else, what we will do is identify new industries, including textiles, fishing, information technology, and manufacturing, that the Treasury Department can target with strong sanctions. And Secretary Mnuchin is representing the Treasury Department. He's here today to prevent sanctions evasion. The order also includes measures designed to disrupt critical North Korean shipping and trade networks. For much too long, North Korea has been allowed to abuse the international financial system to facilitate funding for its nuclear weapons and missile programs. The United States has had representatives working on this problem for over 25 years. They have done nothing. That's why we're in the problem that we're in today, in addition to, frankly, other countries not doing what they should have done. Tolerance for this disgraceful practice must end now. Our new order will give the Treasury Department the discretion to sanction any foreign bank that knowingly conducts or facilitates significant transactions tied to trade with North Korea. And again, I want to just say and thank President Xi of China for the very bold move he made today. That was a somewhat unexpected move, and we appreciate it. New authority in this area applies to any activity that occurs following my signature on the executive order, which I have actually just signed. Foreign banks will face a clear choice: do business with the United States or facilitate trade with the lawless regime in North Korea, and they won't have so much trade. This new order provides us with powerful new tools. But I want to be clear, the order targets only one country, and that country is North Korea. The regime can no longer count on others to facilitate its trade and banking activities. Many countries are working with us to increase economic and diplomatic pressure on North Korea, but I continue to call on all those responsible nations to enforce and implement UN sanctions and impose their own measures like the ones I am announcing today. I must tell you that this is a complete denuclearization of North Korea that we seek. Cannot have this as a world body any longer. In just a few minutes, Prime Minister Abe, President Moon, and I are going to discuss what more we can do working together. We've had a very, very close relationship. I think our nations have become closer because of this. I know it's going to be a great meeting. Our alliance with South Korea and Japan has never been stronger than it is today.
I welcome the new sanction measures of the United States, and I'd like to offer my heartfelt support for that. Bearing in mind those measures between the three countries, we will have the collaboration so that we will move toward the abandoning of nuclear weapons and nuclear program by North Korea, and we'd like to lead into the next action.
In speaking with an Asian analyst yesterday, my sense was that Asians on the street were appalled by President Trump's bellicose remarks that would maybe force North Korea to dig in deeper than it is now.
Well, I think there's a lot of Asians, and I think you could probably find plenty who do think that. But on the other hand, there's probably a lot that really don't care either way. But there's also the quiet undercurrent of a lot of people throughout Asia, through North to South to West Asia, who do think that this is not what Mr. Trump said. The approach he took is not a bad one. They're not likely to say it out loud. But I think there is a appreciation that it's a good thing that the Americans are standing up to adversaries in Asia. So Asia's a big place, so you can find, of course, people who will hold positions at both ends of the spectrum.
Mr. Abe in his remarks said it is indisputably a matter of great urgency. Aside from South Korea, Japan really has a lot at stake in this crisis.
It really does, and it's also worth pointing out that Japan is basically defenseless against whatever North Korea might do, largely a missile threat and someday a nuclear threat. But yes, it has Patriot anti-missile systems and Aegis shipborne anti-missile systems, but really by itself, Japan is in a fix. And that's just dealing with North Korea. And China is an even bigger problem for Japan. So this really is a problem that Japan can no longer avoid as much as it might like to, and Mr. Abe does recognize this. And I think the public at large is coming around to understanding that Japan is not immune from the risks and the dangers that one finds in the Asia region. So this is a sea change of sorts that has taken place. Oddly enough, I think in the Japanese political world, there are still a lot of politicians who have not realize that Japan is in danger and that it does need to do much more in its own defense. And that also includes staying as close to the Americans as possible.
Grant Newsham said for now it appears to be Japan's position that 25 years of talking with North Korea has achieved very little.